So what I'm going to talk about briefly here, it'll be a relatively short video, is a little scribe I made. And I had scribes with a pen, but I wanted a scribe with a point where I could actually etch the line into the parting board. So what I use these for is the parting board. So once you get your plug, which this is obviously a wheel pant, you get it all perfectly sanded or as close as you can get it. And for the process to make a mold, you've got to suspend this in a parting board. So you can make this in 2 halves and lay it flat, but you won't get as accurate as you will on the parting board method. Basically, this is 100%. The molds will match perfectly on this thing. So you get this wheel pant, your fuselage, whatever you have, and you're going to have to lay this on a piece of board. Okay, you can use anything that's relatively smooth. You can use plastic, you can use, this is countertop material, Formica. There's a lot of different things you can use. I prefer the Formica because you can make a lot of molds off of it once you get it to this stage. I make a little box, it's pretty explanatory. And one of the things you can do before you actually make the box and glue this Formica to it, you might be better off taking the Formica in a sheet without the box and laying this part on the Formica. So you're going to have to establish your center line around your part. Once you establish that, you'll know how far to drop this down in your parting board. So the problem's always been transferring this outside dimension here to the parting board. Best case scenario, when you make this part, if you make a template out of C-temp or plastic or whatever, and you trace that on the tooling board to cut the tooling board out, save that template, because if you finish this part, that template will be your outline, so you could just transfer your template to the parting board. Every once in a while you get into a situation where you have to sand too much, or you have a part without a template because it's already made. Let's just say that you want to copy this wheel pant, and this is already a wheel pant. It's a plastic ABS wheel pant, and you want to copy it. Well, obviously you don't have a template to it. So you want to take this and you clay it up. You take modeling clay. I just use non-hardening oil-based clay. You can see here on the inside of this parting board, this modeling clay, it stays soft. Heat it up in your hands and it becomes even more pliable. So I take little globs of clay and I warm it up and I smooth it out, and I'll take this part, whether it's a fuselage, wheel pan, or whatever, and I'll place that on the clay, on the Formica, and you just add enough clay underneath it to hold it steady. You don't want the clay extending past the outside perimeter of your plug. So once you establish this thing, and try to keep it pretty close to being level, you establish that with clay on your Formica or your parting board material. And then you really have 2 choices. One of these choices I used to use, this is just a fountain pen. I pulled this out of a pen, a ballpoint pen, and I just inserted this into this little fixture I made. This is a right angle, and the ballpoint pen comes to a point right underneath this upright vertical. So in effect, what you do is you trace around the part, you're actually drawing a line onto the Formica. Sometimes it helps if you do the 600 grit or clean the Formica or whatever you have, so that way the ballpoint pen won't skip. You know, you get a nice line, and obviously a fresh pen helps. So that's one method, and it worked really well. But I decided I wanted to make another one because I wanted a Scribe, and the ballpoint pen was hit or miss, so I developed this Scribe. This tube here, I think the outside dimension of this brass tube is 94 thousandths. This piece of music wire that goes inside this brass tube, this is probably metric because it's not a perfect telescopic fit. There's a little bit of play, but not too much. I sharpened the end of the music wire as sharp as I could get it, like a pin. And to get the tension on the Scribe, I used these silicone, I believe they are silicone. It's called clear poly bands. You get a box of 400 of them for $5 or so, maybe. What they use these for are braces. People that have braces, they stretch these rubber bands on them somehow. So anyway, just get something that looks about right. They're all about the same size. Clear poly bands. So I got these at CVS. It's a CVS brand. And from there, what I did to secure the rubber band, I took a T-pin and I cut half of the head of the T-pin off, and I bent it around so it's fairly tight. And then I bound it to the tube with CA and Kevlar thread. So I made a little hook and it's bound. And then I did the same thing here on the music wire. I just took the T-pin, cut half the head off, bent it, and I bound it with Kevlar and CA. One of the things I had to do when I put this together is I had to bend the T-pin to where it's tight enough to where you have to actually pull tight on the rubber band to get it to slip through the... Otherwise, you know, by handling it, the rubber band would continuously fall off. And I developed this so when you press on this Scribe, it probably doubles the length of the rubber band. That's how much tension I have. And believe it or not, that much tension seems to be the right amount. Now, if it's not, you can always, you know, change the spacing, or you can actually add 2 rubber bands. I don't know. So in effect, you've got this. This is a wheel pant you plug on the parting board, and then you just run this down until it compresses, and that gives you your tension on the Scribe. And of course, remember the wheel pan is in clay, and it'd probably be beneficial to put some pressure on it so it doesn't move even though you got the clay. And then you'll just trace around it, and by doing that you'll actually get the Scribe line. So I'm not going to clay it up. I'm just going to give you a demo here of what would happen. And let's just say I want to scribe this out here. Okay, press down, and I try to maintain 90 degrees to the part like this. You know, try to always keep this at 90. You know, don't come off too much. Not that it would matter because it's all round, but try to stay pretty straight away. Now what's going to happen, you got a Scribe line here, and it's really fine, and you probably won't be able to pick it up on the camera. But let's just say I take a little magic marker, and let's say I want to cut this out, so I got to be able to see what I'm doing. The Scribe line in itself isn't bright enough to, doesn't have enough definition to show up, at least for my eye. And what I like to do, it's you can rub some ink in there. And it didn't darken it up much, but it darkened it up enough to where I'd be able to see it. You know, get some ink in there, or paint, or whatever you got. And this was just acetone to rub in there. So that darkened it up. Now, you got to remember when you scribe, this scribe line here is going to be half of the dimensions of this tube. So this line is going to be set back from your actual part, which is okay because you need maybe just a little clearance, you know, when you drop this down in the board, the parting board. You don't want it to be, you know, tight, so tight that it's binding. And this one was done with that ink pen, but that's about what you want. You just want a really small gap to clay it, as small as you can get it, and still be able to get this in there. So here's another close-up of it. It's the rubber band, and that's how that works. Now the height of this here basically is going to allow you to scribe different thicknesses of plugs. The way I figured it, it's sort of ad lib when I built this, but so the bottom of the plate right here to the top working surface of your tube, which would be 4 inches. So having 4 inches from the plate to the top scribing surface here, 4 inches will effectively allow you to scribe around a part that's 8 inches thick. So I really didn't think in my hobby part here with the fuselages and the stuff I make, I would go over 8 inches. That's probably something I'd never experience, at least in the hobby. And if it is, I can always make another one of these fixtures, you know, where it's a little bit taller. But I think this will do 99.9% of what I need right here. This tube is roughed up with 320, and it's CA to this 1/8 inch plywood upright. This is just cabinet grade 1/4 inch ply right here. So the Scribe is a really super accurate way of transferring the outer line to your parting board. This worked really well too, but it is a little bit more finicky because of that tube. I mean, or it was a little bit more finicky because of the pen, but it worked. But I think the Scribe is going to work better for me. And if you get to the point where the Scribe isn't sharp enough, what I do to keep a good edge on it, it'll wear down. Take the rubber band off here. And I take my Dremel with a cutoff disc, and what I do is rotate the music wire against the disc on the side of it. And if you want to, you could take a sharpening stone, you know, and sharpen it. But you really want a really sharp point, maybe with just a little bit of a burr on it almost. You want it to really be sharp. That way it'll scratch a nice line in your plastic or your Formica. And that's about it. That's how that works. You know, each tool, you know, each part requires a parting board. I don't have the plug for this, but basically it's in the drawer, but it was the same thing. I had to trace around the part, the master pattern, you know, get this line, and then I cut it out. So it's beneficial if maybe you scribe it and cut it before you put it on the box. If you take your Formica before you glue it to the box and get this cut out, it allows you to get it on your scroll saw, jigsaw, or whatever you do. And I usually use a scroll saw. It's a Dremel scroll. And I might go a 1/16 inch to the line or away from the line. And then I'll actually take a Dremel tool with a carbide drum and I'll just work around the side and I'll work down to the line slowly. Try to avoid any chip out. So once you get to the corners, let's say you got a pretty tight corner, you just take a needle file, you needle file to the line. And that scribe line will allow you to work really, really accurate. So the reason I like making the plug in one piece is there's no way, once you make half of the mold, there's really no way for anything to change. I mean, you make this part of the mold here off of this, and then of course the part would stay in it. Let's say this was a plug and not the part. So on your parting board like this, you'd make this part and you leave this plug in your half of your tool, and that's what you make the other half on. So once this is in there, you re-wax it, PVA it, and then you just mold the second half on top of it. By doing that, these two molds match perfectly. Now, one of the things some of the people do, and I've talked to different people throughout the years, they'll take tooling board and they'll actually CNC half of this part out of the tooling board. So if you can imagine this just as a block of tooling board, the CNC would come out and they'd actually mill away everything to leave you this pattern. It would be a flat surface and half of it, but it's so accurate because of the CNC. So when you have, let's just say, no parting board, but let's say this is tooling board and everything's tooling board that's been milled out, what that allows you to do is vacuum bag and autoclave carbon fiber on top of the tooling board. Now the tooling board's usually a duck egg blue, or a robin egg blue, I should say. Probably blue, almost like this, turquoise blue. And that allows you to actually vacuum bag and autoclave the carbon on top of everything to form the tool. Now, if you tried to vacuum bag on top of something like this to form the tool, well, what would happen is, the clay underneath, it wouldn't hold up. So, as far as the hobby, this took me probably an hour to make. By the time I cut all the parts out, glued it together, and tested it. And the parting board's relatively inexpensive. It's just Formica. I go into hardware stores and I buy this stuff. Try to find the stuff that's broke. You see right here, this was like rejects. It was cracked. If you can buy their damaged stuff, you can get it probably less than half price. You don't tell them this, but basically it doesn't affect what we do, because if you need a wing rib for cutting foam here, you just work around this split, so you're able to utilize 100% of the board, even though it's tore up. Try to get a color that's all uniform, no pattern. It's easier to see your stuff, your lines. The light's better. This maroon is okay too. If you go to a cabinet shop, a lot of times they'll give you scraps. Very seldom do I use a piece of Formica bigger than this. You could get their cut-offs and scraps and stuff. So it's almost free anymore, this stuff here, if you ask around. And then of course the box, this is 1/4 inch cabinet plywood. Maybe this is light ply, I don't know. And just CA a box together and put your parting board on it. So I hope it helps, you know. Sometimes it's the little things that really make the difference.